welcome to the Herd Main Show. I'm your herd leader, John Wayne.
And I'm your sweet little blanket, babe.
And this is what it sounds like when I drink my coffee.
That is what it sounds like when you drink your... Ew, stop it.
And welcome to the show. I am highly caffeinated.
And covered in blankets.
And yes, it's a cozy, comfy, caffeinated episode for us. Not sure how you're enjoying this episode, but we're enjoying this episode quite comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice and cozy because it's a nice and near and dear topic for this one, something we threw around a lot in terms of getting around to, and here we are getting around to it. Apparently season 6 is the season for that, for the everything we talked about doing forever and finally doing it season. And so hopefully you're jiving with it. If not, you can always let us know. Doesn't mean we'll change, but who knows? Maybe. That's why we have Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, where you should be following us. One day we're going to take over the internet completely, but for now you can find us on those markets.
We're not the McClure family. We can't do that yet.
We'll get there. We just have to kill them first.
No.
That's how you gain power, right? Kill other people with power.
Listen, man, thank Travis for Travis. I can't kill Travis.
I'll kill him.
No.
And you can kill Justin because I can't kill Justin.
But who's going to kill Griffin?
Himself, probably. But not
just
like depressingly, but just like out of accident.
Just show him a picture from the banana video.
Right. Oh gosh. If you're not following the McElroy brothers, you're missing some joy in your life.
You are missing out so much.
But anyway, no, we are diving deep into some Fett lore. It's kind of no mistake at this point. It's to the point, actually, we get messages when people see or spot Boba Fett things and just like, you got this, you want this, you need this. And it makes my heart just go wee. Like, I just like when people are thoughtful like that. And so apparently we talk about Boba Fett enough that people closely associate it with us, and that's wonderful. And so we've long talked about that, and especially for me, being my childhood favorite, and still definitely one of the coolest characters of Star Wars in my perception, my opinion, not saying that's definitive. It was only a matter of time before it really got his own episode, or they got their own episode, because I kind of felt like it was impossible to talk about one without the other. Just when we get into some of the backstory, you'll see kind of why that is, but also just because they're literally clones, or at least Boba Fett is a clone of Jango Fett. So,
it was mid-sip. I didn't get to react.
So, they're so closely biologically linked, they might as well be linked in lore and discussion as well. So, it's going to be mostly focused on legends for two reasons. Number one, this, as far as Boba Fett, is the reason I love Boba Fett, is some of these stories that we're going to talk about today. And as far as Jango Fett, it's because that's pretty much all the lore he has. In canon, both Fetts kind of got a lot of their lives kind of chucked out.
We've talked about it before, but like they have some of the most sad backstory.
Yeah, like they were very well built because they were both very well built because they were both so interesting, and so many people were wanting to fill in the gaps and everything, and everybody wanted to put their take on it and make, I'm not saying that particularly Boba Fett was the only Holy Grail character, but to add story to such a cool character was significant. You had people that wanted to do that specifically. So like there's a lot of stories out there, more than most people realize, and definitely very different than probably people realize. So whenever we've talked about like the whole Disney acquiring Lucasfilm, and also just not being big fans of much Legends, we're not saying that without having our own likes as well. There's things I like that are not canon. I still like them though, and that's why I say, nicely and compassionately, you can get over the legend stuff, because I can still read any one of these stories, and I have reread a couple of them recently, Disney didn't take them away from me, so
No, they did not break into the house and steal your Legends books.
Right. And there's actually a good majority in my brain that still exists because it hasn't been completely unwritten yet. Of course, there is some that's just straight out like gone. But you know what? I can enjoy both. I can enjoy the universe where Boba didn't get his tragic backstory, and I can enjoy the one where he did. Although technically, his dad died in all of them, so it's always tragic. But Legends is definitely way more tragic, if you can believe it. So it's going to be a lot of journeying through their legends. And I guess the big intent of this is just having time to geek out and talk about cool stories, and also just opening the veil to people that may only know Boba Fett as the cool guy with the jetpack.
Yeah.
People that view these characters as ridiculously overliked for no reason. There are reasons. There are reasons you can like these characters. They just don't necessarily happen in the films.
Yeah, I mean, most people think that my favorite character is IG-11.
Right.
It's not.
Although, since IG-88 is uncharacterized in canon mostly, if you have to like a droid,
right?
There's little things, and that they're finally starting to get into. There's the Bounty Hunter comic series, which is canon and is currently running. I think it's on like its 3rd or 4th issue. I'm 2 issues in. It's one of those very complicated ones, so I'm having to wait for it to finish, because waiting 1 to 2 months because of the cycle being interrupted by COVID and everything, it's really hard for me to retain what's happening in these comics. So it's very full, which is nice because it being a limited run, they're accomplishing a lot, but it also means I have to wait because I can't retain, and I also can't just keep going back and starting over every time this isn't Red versus Blue. I'm not going to keep starting over for every season that comes out. So they're starting to pull back the curtain on some of these characters like Boba Fett and IG-11 or IG-88, excuse me, and so forth. But still, when you compare it to what was in Legends, like, it's footnotes compared to encyclopedias. Like, it's insane how much was built out for so many characters, but you also had so many years to do it. So
and I did not skim the wiki for this one, so I'm going in blind.
It's so just got some details from Boba Fett's and Jango Fett's story. We'll run down that and have a good time.
Yeah, wee!
So we'll start off with Jango Fett because Jango Fett's got the least. Not really entirely sure why. I will say a bit of this is still deep in my mind and heart, regardless of what happens with canon, and probably forever will be, because I don't really see them getting to Jango Fett's story anytime soon. And I guess it's okay. If they were going to build any Fett, I'd rather them build Boba Fett anyway, because he has way more interaction with the main story and characters, being entangled with like Solo and the rebellion and everything, versus Jango, who kind of stayed away from most of it, which is nice.
He was busy.
Yeah, like he's got one story, and that basically is how he came to be the clone template. And essentially that kind of happens over 2 significant stories, both of which highly recommend you checking out, both very much worth it. One being the comic series Star Wars Open Seasons, or just Open Seasons, or Jango Open Seasons. It depends on which release you read. But regardless, Open Seasons, it's a limited run series that the whole goal was, hey, let's tell the tragic backstory of Jango Fett. And this is where actually, because a lot of people throw out the thing of that one line. Not everybody likes to use Clone Wars stuff for ammunition, but for some reason everybody saw that episode and remembers that one time that one guy said that Jango's not a Mandalorian. Good Lord. If I have to hear that one more time. Guess what, folks? He never was. So it establishes that, yes, he was born in the system, but that does not make one Mandalorian. Mandalorians in lore were not just born on certain planets or anything. To be a Mandalorian was to be in a certain culture, like you join up.
It's a creed. It's not
Yeah.
race.
Yeah, and so like the only people technically born into it are the child of two Mandalorians. But even then, that kid could do something else.
Yeah.
So he was born around the system, and eventually the war between Death Watch and the true Mandalorians ended up killing his family and orphaning him. But he was just a kid who was taken in by a Mandalorian protector named Jaster Muriel. And so that whole line of him not being Mandalorian doesn't disestablish anything of his story, because he was Mandalorian by choice and by adoption, really.
Here's the thing. It's Death Watch thinks that everyone who isn't them isn't Mandalorian.
Yeah, well, because so Jaster led the true Mandalorians in basically like, hey, let's just be reputable, let's be honorable. Like, to be Mandalorian was something of honor, like more in the line of what we see in the Mandalorian show, who, by the way, has the same exact background. So it's a lot of that of honor and tradition, and obviously being revered and being dangerous, but you're not going to kick a puppy. Like, if anything, you're going to kick the guy that kicks a puppy.
Exactly.
But if you were paid to kick a puppy that had killed a kid, you're going to kick that puppy, if that makes sense.
It doesn't,
like,
but I see what you mean.
You're going to do
I'm
some,
married to you.
yeah, you're going to do some stuff that might be viewed as bad, but you're going to do it honorably. So, like, you know, I'm not trying, like, not all Mandalorians are good.
Yes.
But they're definitely better than Death Watch.
Mandalorians are true neutral for all of our D&D friends out there.
Mostly, yeah.
Yeah.
And in the lore were tribes, and so that's where Death Watch came from. They were from Clan Vizsla, which they still are. And basically it was this thing, but tribe to tribe, you might see different practices. And there was this big split in terms of, hey, let's be just reputable people versus, you know, we need to kill and conquer and get back to our roots. Very similar to what we see in the Clone Wars, but less pacifist versus extremist. It's just straight, you know, it's basically choosing two different ways to act. Neither of them want to be pacifists, but one just doesn't want to kill and murder. One wants to, you know, keep a good name.
Yeah.
And so Jaster is sort of the face of this version of Mandalorians. In fact, the sort of circle with the feather across it on Boba Fett's armor is the family crest of Muriel. So, and I'll get to that point later on, but so Jaster was significant in that he adopted Jango Fett, raised him, and obviously favored him over other people, and was grooming him to be the next great Mandalore. Jaster was the Mandalore at this time, which then was much less political power. So like how you view Satine and some of the lore in Rebels and Clone Wars, it's not a political rank. It's a tribal one more so. It's one built on honor, in that you've proven yourself to be the one to be trusted with the leadership of the people. And so a lot of people got passed around the title of Mandalore in Legends. So that's its own very long history.
I remember some of this because, like, this isn't surprise, this is not the first conversation we've had about the Fets.
No.
It's the first of many we've had on microphone.
Yeah.
But, like, I remember a long time ago when we first started dating, when you sat me down and started dumping your Star Wars knowledge on me.
Yes,
before
with consent. With consent.
With consent, of course. I did ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, well, I mean, you were, you were more casual with Star Wars and fun movie stuff before you found things you liked that kind of drove you into wanting to know more and consume more. And so, you were very average in, Boba Fett, that one cool guy.
Yeah. I knew of
versus, and it's just one of those things. Anytime I have the opportunity to say he's more than just a cool guy, because now if you like him just because he's cool, perfectly fine. I did. Eventually, though, there's a lot of character development that he gets through these legend stories that's very significant. So I like for people to have the choice of how they view a character. because there is so much Star Wars, so much can get just drowned out and lost, and so many of these stories are old. So it's one of those things of, are they going to even get the chance to see these or hear about these? And that's why we talk about it here, is because it's this idea of, you might not know, but these things exist, and these things are of interest. If you're at all lukewarm or even negative about these characters, these are things that might completely set you over the edge and make these your favorite characters. Who knows?
Mhm.
I don't necessarily think I'm going to change anybody's opinion in terms of Boba Fett being their favorite character or anything, but if I can at least convince you, okay, maybe he's not just cool. Maybe he actually is a character.
Listen to John and Daniel Logan.
Exactly. So Jaster recruits, trains, and essentially makes Jango like his son. But all this time, they're still going on in war in terms of fighting against the Death Watch. And at one point, one Mandalorian protector, or one true Mandalorian, named Montross, betrays Jaster because he feels like he is more true to leadership than Jango was, and Jaster put Jango in charge. And so Montross basically got the first chance to nope out of there, and he did. And because he did, Jaster ended up getting gunned down in a battle with the Death Watch. It was bad. And so Jango becomes Mandalore. And so he becomes a leader of the people in that moment. And that's really where significant story development starts to happen for him. A few things end up going on. In fact, the most significant thing being that he faces down a group of, I want to say, 8 Jedi, one of which being Dooku, the only one who ended up surviving, obviously, because he goes on to be in films. But Jango murdered the other Jedi on his own because it was meant to be this trap of Montrose had teased Jango with an option of getting revenge, so he goes there, but then he also called the Jedi and said, oh no, the bad Mandos are coming, and basically wanted the Jedi and the Mandalorians, being Jango, that were in his way, to eliminate each other. And it turned out that didn't quite work out. And in fact, a seed was planted in Dooku's mind, but by seeing this happen, of like, oh snap, this guy's legit. So, here and there happens that eventually leads Jango to being able to get his revenge, but Dooku had not forgotten him. And so what's really interesting is this bit of the story in the comics is kind of done in flashback as Dooku's recruiting Jango. We get a different look at that, though, in the other second significant story of Jango's backstory, which is the video game Star Wars Bounty Hunter.
Okay, so that's what that one was.
Yeah, so these are two stories that are technically not connected, but do overlap a little bit. The story of the Bounty Hunter game essentially is, you are Jango and you get to be cool. And it was one of the first really good, you're not a Jedi, you're not doing Jedi, like you're not doing Force things, like you are just a cool character running amok in the galaxy. But you run into some competition when you're given this big job from some mysterious guy. And so the idea being, it's you versus all these other bounty hunters. Whoever gets it first gets the biggest deal ever, like enough to retire on. And out of the woodworks for this deal, of course, comes Montross, the guy that left Jango's mentor and father to die, who had turned bounty hunter just like Jango did to survive. So it becomes this personal vendetta as well, in order to accomplish this mission. This mission being to kill a fallen Jedi who was a former apprentice of Dooku.
Yeah.
See, he had been already working for the Sith and doing separatist things, and he had an apprentice that was with him for a while, but she ended up wanting to do her own stuff and ended up leaving.
Which is supposedly where Ventress's lightsabers came from.
Not even supposedly, exactly.
Okay.
Kamari,
I wasn't sure if that was still canon.
No, they don't say where they come from, but we can believe that.
Yeah.
Kamari Vosa. So basically, Dooku was worried if she gets out and talks, all kinds of plans are going to be, mucked up and everything. You don't want
to have loose ends.
Right. But she's a powerful Jedi turned almost Sith. Not just anybody can take them. And we're also trying to build this army for the Grand Republic and need a clone template. So 2 birds, 1 stone. Get somebody that can kill this Jedi, and if they can, we offer them the deal to be the new clone template. So this is the competition that goes on between Montrose and Jango. Of course, Jango being ultimately the one able to kill Komari.
Because he's Jango freaking
He also,
Fett.
he had gets revenge for his mentor father in killing Montrose. He meets Zam for the first time, and it's really sucky because they're like really good friends in this game. So when he kills her in episode 2, it makes it actually harder to watch.
Yeah.
Like they weren't just working partners, like they weren't more than like romantic, but they were good friends. Like they respected each other and everything.
Which makes me think, do you think that when episode 2 A Certain Point of View comes out, because apparently they're doing all of them, we could get a story like that?
It would be nice. It just goes to show, I mean, having just completed a mission of we've got to protect all assets.
Yeah.
Jango would be also in that same frame of mind in episode 2 of we've got to protect all assets. Keep in mind, by the time of episode 2, he had an even greater asset than anything. He was looking out for his son.
Yeah.
Because if word got out about things and he got in trouble, that meant his son got in trouble. And regardless of Legends versus canon, one thing you don't mess with is Jango's son. He cared about his son.
Just like you care about your son.
Yes.
Also named Boba.
Exactly. So essentially that builds to the point where, obviously Jango takes the deal. He he gets the money, he gets the gig, and he also gets his untampered clone to be able to leave his legacy to. And knowing his tragic backstory of losing both families, essentially, that he had managed to get, the significance of wanting a son was kind of answered in that. And I think that was kind of the point, is let's not just explain how he became a clone template, but why the heck would he want his own son? Like, it's Tamara Morrison. He can get him a kid if he wants. Like, come on.
He could call Ayla Secura.
Right, like he can work something out.
Although, would you want a half Ayla Secura child?
Well, I mean, one of his clones did it, so
gross.
Not Ayla Secura, but like with a Twi'lek.
Oh,
yeah, from that Deserter episode.
Yeah, that was.
So we do see it happen.
That was a neat episode.
But it also pays to with the Mandalorian lore established, he would want a more pure he would want. I want someone that I can completely give myself to. Like, he can be the second coming of me. Like, he can be someone who can lead. Because, I mean, kind of selfishly, though, but it's one of these things like, hey, if I'm this great, think how much greater my son's going to be if he has his father with him the entire time. Yeah. I lost my mentor father, but I can lead my son to be the next great.
I just had, like, a very heartwarming image in my brain of Jango holding a baby Boba and just being a dad, and it just made my heart hurt for a minute.
Oh yeah, he loved his kid and was very proud. And there's many stories in Legends, and there's a couple in canon that established that, but there was never in question. There's actually one cool one where a young Boba goes with his dad on a mission, and it's the start of the story seems to suggest that Jango used Boba as bait to get the bounty, and the bounty kidnaps Boba and all this other stuff. But essentially, it's revealed at the end that was the plan all along, was to pull out the bounty by kidnapping the kid, because it seemed like an easy gig, and that would be a hostage. Never mind the fact that he never expected the kid to be the one to kill him.
Yeah.
So, Boba gets his tag, and also proved that he knew all along and trusted his dad unequivocally. Like, he at no point was in an Abraham Isaac situation where it's just like, Dad, where's the sheep? Like, no, it's like, Dad, he's the sheep.
Oh no, I'm the sheep.
So it's really cool. What's different though is in canon we don't see it much that Jango trained any clones, but in Legends it was very much that Jango trained particular clones. In fact, the ARC troopers were handpicked and trained by Jango himself, the first batch, of course.
Yeah.
So there's this interesting dynamic that would have been present there for actual Boba to see his dad training all these other hymns and everything. Like, it's some interesting psychological stuff going on that it's not quite there with what we have in canon. That's kind of okay, but it's interesting things that would have shaped how Boba grew up.
Yeah, like we see a couple glimpses of Boba's relationship with the clones through one
yeah.
episode. And that was heartbreaking.
Well,
and
yeah.
I just, I don't want to think about it
in
too
those
much.
moments, there's this added trauma of his dad being dead now.
Yeah.
So he can't even properly grieve without seeing his dad and everything. It's tough. So it's really interesting to understand or try to step into what Boba's story was.
Mm-hmm.
Now, keep in mind, not all of his stories were this way. Obviously, at one point, there was no such thing as clones and Jango Fett and all this other stuff.
Yeah, the Clone Wars was just a throwaway line at one point.
Yeah, like there's other interesting things that eventually, basically, they explained away by being legends. Basically, they were like, yeah, maybe that was how Boba Fett came to be Boba Fett. Or maybe Boba Fett's not even his real name. Like, all these things, like, legends basically covered it up in terms of all these other authors' conflicting stories. Basically, well, one of them might be true, none of them might be true. It's the mystery of Boba Fett. The only thing that really established any real thing was when episode 2 came out and gave him a story and everything.
I think the smartest thing that Star Wars did when it came to those old stories was calling them legends.
Right.
Because, like, you could think of them as two aliens sitting at the Mos Eisley Cantina swapping stories.
Sure.
Like, that's how I like to think about the old stories.
Yeah. And it's also good because certain tales get very high. Like, they're just very, oh boy, that's a yarn.
Did you hear?
Yeah.
Did you hear about the droid that downloaded their consciousness to the Death Star?
Right. Did that happen? There's nothing that says it didn't, but it also just could be some rumor of,
dude,
like, there's so many things you can explain away just because of the idea. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't.
Yeah.
And so, but when you really get into Boba Fett's story, you start to see some of those very interesting. As far as legend stories, though, Boba Fett's is not the weirdest, which is thankful. But so Star Wars Bounty Hunter and Star Wars Open Seasons, highly recommend you check those out if you want to know more about Jango Fett. Again, not much of that has been ruled out by canon, so if anything, you can enjoy those and consider them true.
Yeah.
They're also the least recommended viewing, reading, watching of this whole list because it's literally 2 stories versus Boba's, which is several.
And also, like, if you want some primo 2000s graphics, play the Bounty Hunter game.
Oh yeah, it you can get it like on the PlayStation Market. It's really cheap, and you can play it on PlayStation 4 or 3, whichever. But yeah, you can still get that game, and it's very difficult and it's a pain in the butt, but it's very fun.
Yeah.
You just got to be willing to go through it.
Like most PS2 games.
You got to earn your right to be a Mandalorian.
There you
go.
go.
And the game is the challenge. So moving on to Boba Fett's story, you've got to strap in and take hold of your bantha because it's a wild ride.
Where's my bantha?
Just check your jetpacks at the door and, just sit her down.
How about here's a PSA. Here's the disclaimer song. Don't do it. Don't buy a jetpack. Don't play with a jetpack. Do not. You may be entranced by the jetpack.
If he didn't have his jetpack,
He'd
least
be alive.
one time, he wouldn't have gotten out of the Sarlacc, though. The same jetpack that got him in his situation also got him out of his situation.
That's not canon.
So, it could be. Could be.
It's not canon.
I haven't seen a gravestone for the boy, so he's not dead yet. No, so yes, now we start the wild ride of Boba Fett's story, and there's a lot to cover, and I want to make sure to try and hit the big points of his career. I'm not going to cover everything just because there is so much. Again, there was people clamoring all over, and never mind the people that told just Boba Fett stories, but then you've also got people that are telling other stories that also just involve Boba Fett.
Mm-hmm.
So he was very prevalent in a lot of Marvel Star Wars comics back in the day, lots of Legends books. He was a piece that you had in almost every Star Wars puzzle.
He was in the holiday special.
Yeah.
That was his introduction.
Yep. And that's part of the story, even like where did that happen? When did it happen on the timeline? Somewhere, but it's all there. So there's so much. So the benefit of that is even with what we talk about, there's still more for you to go and discover for yourself, and highly recommend you do. But there's a lot I want to cover to really flesh out who Boba Fett was as far as a Legends perspective. Some spoilers here and there, but all of these stories are still going to be very worthwhile reading or checking out, even if you get some of the details in there. If anything, it might encourage you to go check these stories out when you realize some of the things that's going to go down in some of them.
Yeah.
So essentially, the whole Clone Wars storyline is just the same at that point. That's when Legends Boba becomes just kind of casual, neutral Boba, and all those stories are the same. Although somewhere in there he gets his dad's armor somehow. Also in there somewhere he gets Jester Mariel's armor somehow, and that's supposed to explain why his armor went, from silver and blue to the green. Okay, that's kind of okay. That's kind of and that would explain why the family crest of Jester Mariel's on there and everything. It's because it's his armor. It's fine. We start to see this trend of Boba trying to live up to his heritage, essentially, even going so far as to join the Mandalorian protectors on Concord Dawn, and even going by the alias of Jester Mariel. Fun fact, he was intended to be Jester Mariel. Boba Fett was originally an alias in one story, and his real name was Jaster. And he had this whole crazy background, including joining the Empire and defecting at one point and all this other stuff. But again, Legends proactively was just like, that's one of the tales. So him wearing his grandfather's armor, him going by the name, that's meant to explain why people would think that about him. He let people think that about him. He let the legends build and grow over time because he wanted to be the guy of myth. Not for pride's sake, but he just always wanted people guessing. He didn't want anybody to know him.
Which is smart.
Oh, yeah. And so, but during his time being a part of Mandalorian culture, though, because at this point, Mandalorians were not completely eradicated from the galaxy and were just trying to make their living and everything. He meets a Kif-R bounty hunter. By the way, Kif-Rs are the species of Quinlan Voss.
Okay, thank you.
1 in 100 are psychometric, and but not his wife, whose name is Cintas. So this is about 16 years before Episode 4. He meets and marries a woman. He was somewhere in here. He was 18. No, he was 16. She was 18. And they ended up having a kid together. But his Mandalorian career, as well as his marriage, would end in tragedy when Mandalorian that just had it out for him for no reason, other than just because people liked him more. It's kind of a Saul and David situation. Basically, assaulted his wife to such a point that she had PTSD from the assault, a sexual assault. And so she just like pushed Boba away. Meanwhile, because he killed the guy that did that, he was locked up in prison for it, which goes like, even criminals like don't do it. Like they don't deserve it. Like it does no one any good. It honors no one for you to become a bad guy, to hurt the bad guy that hurt you. I know this is just Star Wars stuff, but like there's all kinds of things going on in the world where people think it's okay because they did bad stuff. Like they deserve this and they should be like, keep your humanity intact, please.
Please.
I'm not saying forgive them necessarily. I'm not saying it's got to be okay and you should ignore, but I am saying like don't degrade your morals because other people have no morals.
Yeah, it's very easy to say, don't sink to their level, but it is the best thing is when you retain your humanity.
Right. Because, I mean, in this scenario, yes, a lot was taken away from Boba, but a lot could have been saved if he had just let certain things go. But nonetheless, he lost his Mandalorian career and standing. He lost the woman he loved along with the kid that they had just had. And it ended up going so far as his wife hating him and teaching her daughter to hate him so that he'd never be able to see and reconcile with his family ever again. And so here we start the tragic backstory of Boba Fett. And so this sets him off just on this very lonely man's Clint Eastwood storyline of just like, I tried being a good guy and it didn't work. And so he goes on to just kind of make a career for himself. And this leads him to teaming up with Jabba the Hutt, even Moff Tarkin, and of course, Darth Vader. Clearly, Darth Vader and Boba Fett knew each other before Episode 5, hence the warning, no disintegrations and everything.
Yeah.
Did you know, though, that they were not best buddies at all? They might have had a mutual respect for each other, but it was only because they both knew they couldn't kill each other, because they've tried on 2 occasions.
Honestly, that's a lot of my relationships professionally, so I get it.
Like, I can't kill you, so I'm going to respect you, but I don't like you.
Basically.
Yeah, on at least 2 occasions. On one occasion, it was a lightsaber duel where Boba Fett actually held his own against Darth Vader on Mos Espa, which was basically the foundings for Boba Fett was sent on a bounty, and Darth Vader was like, bounty hunters are scum. You can't trust them to do it, so I'm going to go do it. And then he fights Boba Fett, and he's like, bounty hunters are scum, but you're pretty cool. So, you know what? Go on about your business. So overall, sort of peaceful, but essentially it, started this sort of animosity.
Yeah.
And later on, when Boba Fett got involved on a bounty that was personally important to Vader, not like Padme personally important, but just like he wanted a thing done, and Boba Fett got involved, that meant that that thing wasn't happening the way he wanted. So Darth Vader was just like, all right, dude, come on. Like, I don't want to have to get in a stalemate, which eventually is what happens. They get into this fight on this lava planet, and it's just like super, super duper epic. This is in like Star Wars Tales comic series, so you can see it all play out, and it's really cool. But
yeah.
The Dark Lord of the Sith acquiring respect for a bounty hunter is pretty significant.
And it just goes to show that if you're having trouble with a coworker, you must best them in hand-to-hand combat.
Exactly. And so it was just one of those things, like, but again, a huge part of Mandalorian lore, which slowly has started returning in canon. These dudes fought and lived and were bred for battle, especially during times of war with Jedi and Force users specifically. So Boba Fett being able to hold his own is not entirely unfounded, but Darth Vader coming to this respect of just like, you know what? Like, personally, you didn't completely offend me, so I guess I can let you live, but I also need to keep an eye on you because I should be able to best you. Like, no, like if this dude can resist mind control, which he could, that was a thing. This is where it did start to get into some, okay, what can't he do territory. Yeah. But like, it was in small enough doses that I think it was just enough okay. And considering, again, Mandalorians trained to kill Jedi. Jedi use the Force, Sith use the Force. And not only that, but he specifically went all like Sarah Hamilton in Terminator 2 training style for killing Jedi after they killed his dad. So
you just mixed up Sarah Connor and Linda Hamilton's names.
People knew what I meant.
I knew what you meant.
They're the same person. They're both just BA and awesome, and we all strive to be as awesome as they are. So, right? Yeah, they killed his dad, so of course he's working like, no, I need to be ready to take down these Jedi. I need to train. I need to be able to resist. And it's not like he completely, like, basically he just fought back against the mind control. It didn't mean he could just completely outright resist it, but basically it meant Darth Vader was stunned trying to use the Force, and Boba Fett was stunned trying to resist the Force, so it was a stalemate. So Darth Vader basically was just like, okay, well, I can't do that then. I guess I'm just going to chop your head off. Yeah. But then, Boba got a shot off on him, like headshot on him. Thank goodness for that armor. So it's just this epic battle where in the end, these two guys are just like, that guy's pretty bad news. I'm not going to mess with him, but I'm not going to let him just go. I need to keep an eye on him. Yeah. But also around this time, around 12 years before episode 4, is when Boba Fett first encountered the Corellian smuggler Han Solo.
Yes, and discovered, hey, this guy's pretty bad at smuggling.
Now, here's the thing. So there's a couple of different ways this sort of plays out, but essentially both can kind of exist alongside each other. In one event, Han Solo and Lando Calrissian basically just straight up humiliated the crap out of Boba Fett on a hunt. He was sent for Han Solo, and they not only got away, but just got away in a way that dude just finished beating up Darth Vader. He should have been able to handle this. And so that sort of started this whole, I have got to kill this guy that just keeps outdoing me, because he has no business outdoing me because he's so bad at everything. But then one scenario also has it playing out where Boba Fett is just like super self-righteous anti-drugs.
Really?
Yeah, like there's a significant part, like he literally has the line in one story where he's like, a man that's willing to run spice will run anything. Spice degrades your life and leads to worse things. Like, he's like slippery slope, dude. You start smoking a cigarette, then you're on to pot, then you're on heroin, and then you're in the gutters. And then, like, what are you doing with your life?
So he was a Reagan supporter.
Bruh, he was like hardcore. But this all comes from things like Mandalorian culture of, you know, just respecting your body and honing your body.
Winners don't do drugs. Yeah.
Like, just, it was a very honorable thing. Like, basically their goal, it seemed in a lot of writing, was to make Boba Fett honorably bad. Like he's definitely against the good guys, but he has a reason. It's because Han ran spice. Like, he was pulling a Tim Allen, and Boba Fett was like, not on my watch. And it was just, that's a reference like half of no one is gonna get. But
I'll tell you who's gonna get it. Roll Farm Boy is gonna get it.
There you go. So
and Cam Ray is gonna get it.
I appreciate it for the fact of trying to give him a very unheard of background. Like, the only anti-drug person so far has been Obi-Wan, and that's literally just because he was in public, probably, because you know he was on some kind of drugs to be put up with Anakin.
You know that Qui-Gon was doing something. He was smoking that shit
because he had to put up with Obi-Wan. Everybody has to put up with somebody, so you always need something. I have coffee. You have Boba. So there you go. Everybody needs something to get by.
You need to toke up on a jazz cigarette.
And Boba Fett had his morals. That was what he had. So there's, take it or leave it, whichever one you want, whether he's anti-drug Boba or whether he's just, you better not embarrass me in front of the galaxy Boba. Either way, he hates this dude. He hates Han Solo. And again, guy that fought Darth Vader, there's no good reason why Han Solo kept escaping. There is none.
Okay.
Oh, but there is an explanation at one point, though, for why Boba Fett found Han in Episode 5. In one story, one of the ways he escapes from... So when the Empire and Boba Fett sort of get in an entanglement because they're both after Han Solo, because he was an Imperial defector, but he was also a spice runner, and also owed Jabba money. So both of them had different reasons for wanting him. So he basically pits them against each other, and in order to escape, latches the Falcon onto the back of the Star Destroyer, and when they can't find him, they leave, and then they dump their junk before hyperspacing out of there, and that's how he escapes. So somewhere in there, Boba Fett figures out how he was able to escape. So come Episode 5, he's just like, oh, I've heard this story before. And so he just waits out, and he just knows, like, it was a really cool way to make it make sense and also have this just very interesting history.
There's a lot with Star Wars that it connects very wonderfully. Most of the time having to do with Han Solo. Like, you know that Leia's trick with the thermal detonator was just from story.
Han Solo. Exactly.
Yeah.
There's little things like that where it's like, no, you didn't need it, but it's just, it adds something. It's nice.
And you know when she was telling the story back to him, he was like,
it was a real thermal
detonator. What? I used a rock.
Gosh, you've got balls. Like, you know, and then they got married, you know?
Yeah.
Get you a woman that's willing to use a thermal detonator.
I mean, I proposed.
It's time for Prince Shizor! Sorry, that was meant to be my transition. Prince Shizor. So this is after the Battle of Yavin, about 7 to 10 years. So this is post Return of the Jedi. Yes. This is after Boba Fett escaped the Sarlacc and then was promptly put back in by murderous Jawas. And then he escaped the Sarlacc and then was put back in. And then he escaped the Sarlacc and was nursed back to health by his buddy Dengar.
Oh, yeah. Dengar!
So they became bosom buddies and went on some adventures. But these guys ran into some trouble with Prince Shizor, or Caesar,
King
or Zizar. Like, there's so many ways to announce it. But it's the green dude from Mustafar that sounds like Kevin Michael Richardson. He was the only one that didn't get his head cut off by Darth Maul and that one thing with the Shadow Collective.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
I'm there. I'm with you.
So this is Shadows of the Empire territory. This is after Episode 6, where things just got zany. And this is the time when the Bounty Hunter Wars took place. So basically, this becomes like the world's greatest game kind of storyline, where basically Prince Shizor comes to the Empire and is just like, hey, you don't like bounty hunters? I don't like bounty hunters. But you know what? We don't like fighting the rebellion. So what if we got the bounty hunters to fight the rebellion? But what if we only got the strongest bounty hunters? So what if we got the 2 bounty hunters that we don't like, that's on this side and that side, to fight each other, east side, west side style? But then only the bestest of the bestest, we offer a deal of a lifetime to get all of their just bad stuff written away if they fight the rebellion for us. But only after they've proved themselves against the other guy. Convoluted? Yes. Great storytelling? Yes. It's so ridiculous. It's so freaking ridiculous. It's a 3-book series about the bounty hunter wars, and it's literally just Boba Fett just being dope. Like, it's literally just story after story, and it literally ends only after they're like, crap, he survived the war, so what are we supposed to do with him? Because he's not happy about being used by the Empire, which he figures out at some point. Oh, let's have Prince Caesar give him a bunch of money and write it off, and then
let's put him back in the Sarlacc. He's been in there a couple times.
Like, it basically resolves itself in a way where it's just like, haha, you don't have to kill me because I'm necessary for another story. But you're also free, and also bounty hunters are still legal. Like, when you get to the end, you're like, so wait, what was the point? The point was to have an awesome Boba Fett story. That was it. But it was really awesome. But yeah, no, the plot's that convoluted where basically it's just this whole thing of pit the bounty hunters against each other. So it's bounty hunter civil war, and then take the bestest of the bestest and then throw them at the rebellion because we're weak and just running out of Imperials at this point.
Which happens.
It doesn't work that way, of course.
Of course not.
It's one of those things where I feel like it changed so much as it was all getting written, and it got just to a point where they were just like, look, we got to resolve this because Timothy Zahn's coming in and he's got a much better story for this. So let's just move on.
How many times do you think that's happened in Star Wars?
Right. Let's just make way for Timothy Zahn, please.
Timothy Zahn's coming in again.
So that's one of the most immediate stories after Return of the Jedi. And one of the last very Boba Fett just being cool bounty hunter guy, very almost I'd say traditional. This is when Boba Fett just completely deviates from regular storytelling and becomes just a whole different character. He's no longer Boba Fett the bounty hunter. He becomes Boba Fett the Mandalorian, essentially, because everything after this point involves him and his heritage. He gets this one deal because he's trying to hunt down a cure for this cancer that he's developed because of the Sarlacc. Also, he's dying because he's a clone. It's just real bad times for him.
This is Boba's bad week,
right?
Honestly.
And so it leads him to taking on a couple of jobs to lead him to the right direction. Essentially, what happens along the way, though, is he gets another job that brings him face to face with the Mandalorians he had not been entangled with since getting kicked out after his wife's rapist was killed. And so the Kaminoans hire him to take out a Mandalorian named Finn Shaw. The current Mandalore. And then we don't know what happens. Fade to black, fade back in, and Boba Fett's Mandalore.
Yay!
Literally. Like that. That's not a joke. I'm not skipping details. Like we don't know what happened. Finn Shaw's dead and Boba Fett's Mandalore.
I think we can assume something cool happened.
It's probably. It's like the whole Cad Bane versus Boba Fett thing. We never saw it, but you know what happened.
Yeah.
So anyway, so he replaces Shaw as Mandalore, which is awesome. And this is now 23 years after Episode 4, by the way. So Boba Fett is now in his mid-40s, almost 50s. And then he ends up reconnecting with his daughter when he finds out that his daughter's impersonating him to defame his character. So basically, she's just running around parading like Boba Fett, kind of like Jack Sparrow's old flame on Stranger Tides, where it's like, Jack Sparrow's putting together a crew? What? I'm Jack Sparrow. And basically, it's the same plot line, eventually figuring out, oh, hey, you're doing this thing because you knew I'd find you, and now we found each other, and now adventure! So it's this whole thing, but essentially it puts them on track of, hey, you're dying, and there's a guy who we know has a cure for that. Also, our daughter might still be alive. So let's go figure that out. Or not daughter. My granddaughter? It's confusing. Like there's 3 generations. Like it's the wife, daughter, and granddaughter.
Okay.
Yeah. Like all of them get in a bunch of just crazy entanglement. So he teams up with his daughter to figure out what happened to his wife, I believe, while also trying to find a cure for what is ailing him, which is everything, basically. It's very much like Old Man Logan story at this point, where it's just very like, oh crap, I was the best of the best, and now everything that made me the best of the best is killing me.
I punch and it hurt.
Right. So in the middle of this, though, of course, Yuuzhan Vong War, of which Boba Fett does get involved, does help out, and
we covered that.
Yeah, basically, because the whole point is the Yuuzhan Vong show up. How do we deal with them? Let's waste 12 books to tell how that story happens, and then just have the Rebellion, Empire, and Mandalorians team up and do it anyway. Oh, why didn't we think of that 10 books ago? That's basically the Yuuzhan Vong War involvement. They're involved because the Mandalorians are involved. So now we get to Boba Fett in his 70s. His relationship with his daughter's been restored, which is nice. But he is still plagued by the fact that he is on the verge of death, but for being who he is. He's a clone. And so, but there's here tell legend of someone who was at the Battle of Geonosis, wears Mandalorian armor, and is still alive. So they were kind of like, okay, maybe it's another, because by the way, there was actually at least 2 occasions where a clone trooper basically tried going off the guises of like Jango and Boba Fett. Like they basically just left and pulled a Boba Fett, Jango Fett, and all this other mess. So basically they're just like, oh, maybe it's another clone.
Yeah.
Well, if he's still alive and well, maybe he knows the secret and we can steal it from him.
Surprise, it was Rex.
No. No, all the clones had ridiculous names in Legends. So, but...
It's Coaxium Stan.
And then on top of this, okay, so wait, hang on.
Are you not going to acknowledge my fantastic clone name?
What?
Coaxium Stan.
Coaxium Stan. No, that's a cool rap name, though.
I rap the fastest.
So now he's on a mission to find his daughter, reconnect with her, and also solve his death problem. You know, the fact that everybody dies.
Everybody poops, everybody dies.
Instead of finding his daughter, though, he reconnects with his granddaughter. And they're all cool, and his granddaughter is just full-on Mandalorian, which is really dope. He's very proud of that. But essentially, she's the one that helps point him in the direction of the one who might have the cure. Again, they don't entirely know what's going on, but essentially, it's a lead. So if you're following, at one point he becomes Mandalore, hears about his daughter still being out there.
Yeah.
Kind of tries to reconnect with her, but it doesn't quite work out. Fast forward the Yuuzhan Vong War, and he hears tell again of his daughter, but instead of finding his daughter, he finds his granddaughter. And his granddaughter's like, hey, let's try this. And that's the adventure we're on at this point. And this, meanwhile, is Boba Fett in his 70s.
Yeah, if you hear weird noises, it's because Boba keeps hearing his name, and he's just like, what are you talking about?
See, not only did you not expect Boba to be a family man, you also did not expect to see his family on Jerry Springer, which is basically all of what happens.
He aimed a father.
So at some point, so we know that not long after they got married, they had the kid. So he married Cintas. They had a kid named Aelin, and then somewhere in there, she met a Mandalorian guy who was nice and cool, and they had a kid.
Yes.
He's now working with his he is now working with his granddaughter, whose name is Murda.
Her name is Murda?
Yes, her name is Murda. Murda Gev.
That's funny.
So he teams up with Murda on this mission to get this anti-dye juice. Is basically what's going on.
It's actually just orange juice with pulp.
Somewhere out there, his wife is still there, still hates him.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere out there, his daughter had impersonated him, and he kind of put an end to that, but she's still not too happy with him. And meanwhile, he's hanging out with Murda.
He's known
Murda. And so they're working together to figure all of this out when they find out that meanwhile, so while all the Fett family drama is going on, and I don't know if this was meant to parallel, but also all the Solo family drama is going on.
Of course it was.
It intersects when, for some reason, Jason Solo captures Aelin, his daughter, and tortures and kills her, basically.
Cool.
And this basically becomes the moment where Boba Fett, who had long been like, "Hey, Han, let it go. You know what? I've got priorities now. You've got kids now. Let's let it go." They went their separate ways, and Jason done brought him back in, and he hates the Solos again.
I mean, can you blame him?
Right. So Boba and his granddaughter recover her remains and Jango's off of Geonosis, and have them buried next to each other on Mandalore, starting the Fett family grave. It's kind of nice, I guess.
You just pop them in one after the other.
Yeah, it's an honorable thing.
They're
So
stacked like Eggos in a pouch.
So they restart their journey for the guy in Mandalorian armor who might know something about the clone stuff. Turns out he does. Turns out he did find a cure. Turns out he destroyed it, but turns out he plans to transfer his bone marrow to Boba to moot the point. Finger waggles of mystery. Yeah, like it was this whole thing of like, hey, we're here for the virus, or we're here for the antidote. And it's like, I don't have it. I destroyed it, but I did drink it. Okay, can you make it? No, but have my bone marrow. Okay, cool. And then we're good. So now he's not dying anymore because they had to resolve that one.
I feel like at any point in this story, I would understand completely if you gently remove your headphones and set them on the table, walk away, and come back.
Dude, this is the era of New Jedi Order and just all this other craziness. So this is all happening around probably my least favorite period. Although there's elements of it that are interesting. That being, and we're getting into this point, at some point Boba Fett finds out that Mara Jade, who was Luke's wife, was killed at Jason's hands. And he actually sends a gift, for some reason not to Luke, but instead to Han.
Dude, your brother-in-law's wife died. Right. Crazy.
Yeah, and just a bunch of he sends Beskar armor and all this other stuff, and basically under the guise of, for when you need justice. Like, he's like, when you need to kill your kid, here's this.
That's fair. And
you know what he does? Nothing. But his daughter's like, Dad, I'm gonna go kill my brother. So his Jonna, Jason and Jonna are twins, by the way. And yes. So this whole time, when Jason started falling to the dark and became Darth Cassius, Jonna's always been the one like, I can stop him. I need to stop him. And it's getting nowhere. So now she's just like, nah, bro, I'm going to kill him. And if you're not going to help me do it, I'm going to go to this guy because he sends people knives in the mail. Surely he knows how to kill people. No, like, you think I'm exaggerating. I'm simplifying, okay, but I'm not exaggerating.
This reminds me so much of a story about my brother Justin. To where... Oh, yeah. Yeah. My brother Justin is a special guy. He is probably one of the most intense people I know, but also one of the funniest. Mm-hmm. He once wrote a love letter to a girl that he knew at camp, mm-hmm, and then stabbed it into her door with a Bowie knife. Yeah, so that's basically what he did, except, sorry, your bro's wife died. And then just imagine that another unrelated person who you did not send the gift to took the knife and was like, ooh. Mine. Right, like... It's crazy. So she goes and she starts getting trained by Boba Fett in the ways to be able to take down her brother. And this is when Fett starts to get into this whole high horse of just like, yeah, he needs to be taken down because Sith and Jedi are all alike and it's all going to end bad. But you shouldn't kill him because he needs to suffer for it and all this other stuff. Like, he's got some views. He's got some interesting views. He's got some old man views. But like, I do agree and appreciate that he was trying to prepare Jonna for the whole thing of just like, it's not going to go exactly how you think. It's not going to be as easy as you think. Like, just because you know how to fight your brother doesn't mean that you're really going to be able to put an end to things. But nonetheless, he does try and help her quite a bit, all while still working with his granddaughter and the Mandalorians to help take down Darth Cassius or Jason Solo.
Because again, because Jason had his daughter killed and his granddaughter's mother killed, they're personally involved. But because they're personally involved, they don't entirely trust the Jedi. So there's many occasions where because they don't entirely trust and they all have different reasons for wanting to take down Jason, it doesn't work. And that prolongs the process. Again, the Fetts want to take him down for personal, like you took our family member from us. Jana wants to stop him just because she doesn't want anyone else to take that responsibility. Luke wants to because he wants justice for his wife. Like there's just so much, which you would think it's like layers in an onion and it's cool, but it's like it gets muddy.
Yeah.
It's
like biting into an onion.
Right. Yes. What is interesting though is just where all of it starts to go. And Jason is a vindictive dude. So when he starts having trouble with the Mandalorians, he ends up kidnapping Fett's granddaughter, breaking her back and paralyzing her from the neck down, and then using her blood to create a virus specifically targeted against the Fetts that he spreads across Mandalore that if they were to enter would immediately kill them. Making it so they can never, ever, ever again go to Mandalore.
Why?
Well, originally the idea would have been because he thought he thought Fett was hiding from him, and best bet is Mandalore. And I mean, rather than kill everyone, they just go for I'm just gonna go for Boba. But he's not on the planet, so it didn't kill him, but it meant that he could never go back to Mandalore.
And this is why
Yeah.
when we talk about Legends and we talk about, the sequel trilogy, nothing can be more ridiculous than what has already happened, honestly.
And keep in mind, he's still in his 70s at this point doing all of this. Yeah. So it's pretty crazy. But nonetheless, John is eventually able to defeat Jason and essentially Fett finds out that he thought that Murda was just dead because Jason had just kept her captive for so long. But he finds out she's alive and he takes on continuing to help her heal because she's paralyzed from the neck down because of her injuries. But also trying to find a solution to the virus on Mandalore that could kill them if they ever decide to go home. And that's the last story in the Legends of Boba Fett. It ends with them not being able to return to Mandalore, but them kind of trying to. So it's interesting. It's definitely a very different ending point than I think anyone who ever starts the journey of Boba Fett's character could imagine.
Yeah.
You don't imagine this kid who's a clone of a dude that wears cool armor ending up necessarily in these scenarios. But along the way, there are a lot of good stories. I think, honestly, before you get post Return of the Jedi is where most of the interesting stuff happens and where it's a little less crazy. But once he really starts to get into Mandalorian culture and all of that stuff, it just starts to get a little bit more wild. Because, again, that's also the just weirdest storytelling then because you've got the Solo family stuff going on and you've got just a lot happening that's just very convoluted and crazy. But it's all for you to decide. It's all out there. And again, much of it, especially pre-Return of the Jedi stuff, I highly recommend.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, if anything, maybe this pointed you in the direction of Boba Fett's more than you probably thought he was as a character.
Yeah.
Which most characters are. If you're willing to dig in and learn more about them, you might find something that, although you don't necessarily like them, might give you some respect for them, or best case scenario, it just altogether makes them your favorite character, maybe.
A great many things in Star Wars and in life depend on your point of view.
Exactly. I'll go on record saying what made me love Boba Fett was the bounty hunter stories. I like Empire era bounty hunting Boba. I like the idea of this kid who was disgraced at one point reaching the rank of Mandalore like his father and grandfather and all of this other stuff. And I like him turning from just taking jobs to get by to being a respected leader of people. It's the crazy other stories that go on that I'm just kind of like, okay, could have done without that. Could have done without the Yuuzhan Vong. Could have done without Darth Caedus. Like these things. But nonetheless, Boba Fett, in my mind, eventually he becomes Mandalore. It's all resolved, and he's a great leader, and that's that. Like I'm okay if that's the end of the story for him. I've long said I love a good old man Boba story, like very, very much in the vein of Logan and all that other stuff in terms of just training the next generation, one last hurrah kind of story, and just having a good time and resolving the character appropriately, not just tossing him in a pit.
I think if we do see Boba in the Mandalorian season 2 or season 3 or whatever, I think that would be a proper ending to his story. Would be handing it off,
right?
Being like, you're the Mandalorian now,
right? That would be I mean, that would be very cool.
Yeah, get to see old man Tamara Morrison just he's not that old.
I mean, he's near the age he would be in that timeline, which is nice. That's why I keep saying, like, guys, you need to use him. Like,
please.
Who knows what season 2 has? We're excited, but and that's the thing is we're leading into talking about the Mandalorian for the month of September, and so wanted to start off with the lore of the sort of Mandalorians,
the Mandalore,
the Fetts. Because without the Fetts, there would be no Mandalorian show. There'd be no love for Mandalorians. If it didn't start with a cool guy in armor, we wouldn't have gotten what we've gotten.
And something to remember is that sometimes because bad things happen, good things come out of them, i.e. the Star Wars Holiday Special. If we did not have that, we would not have Boba Fett.
I think we would still have Boba Fett, but the best part about that is definitely Boba Fett.
Definitely not Han Solo's bicycle seat face.
So, definitely check out some of these stories and whatnot. If you go to the Boba Fett fan club page, you can get a timeline of all of these and get names of books and comics specifically
and get cool
that tell these stories and get cool shirts and all this other stuff. So if you want to discover more about Boba Fett as well as Jango Fett, you can definitely check that out. But it's definitely recommended. I mean, especially with The Mandalorian coming out soon. Get acquainted with the guys that started it all, Boba and Jango Fett, and they'll always be two of my favorite characters. There's no taking that away, no matter what.
Yeah.
So, but hopefully you enjoyed. Again, check it out. Don't forget to also check out our awesome supporters in Game Infinite, especially with all the kinds of gaming news, including Star Wars related Star Wars Squadrons, Lego Star Wars, the new Sims download apparently.
We're going to talk about that.
Game Infinite covers all things gaming, and I'm not just talking about live streaming and all this other stuff, but cosplay, art, all kinds of stuff. So Game Infinite's a great place to be right now because so many Star Wars games are on the horizon. So, and we appreciate Jesse and his support of the show. We also appreciate Red5Network, which is basically just a home for wayward podcasters who are awesome. We somehow got in. Don't know how, but there's so many awesome people in Red5Network. You can check it out, red5network.com, and check out all of those crazy, awesome people. They're much better than us, and they deserve all of your love. Thank you to our patrons who support the craziness for some reason. You're bad with your finances, but we appreciate it because you support us. So thank you, Doug, Rebecca, and Jim. Your support is insanely meaningful, as is everyone else's support for listening to the show, sharing it, rating it. All of that stuff. We appreciate everything you do, even if it's just listening. And so you can check out links below for all kinds of stuff, including our Patreon if you want to go further. If you want to send our cats and dog to college.
This boy needs some college.
He needs help. Boba needs something. Otherwise, he's going to turn out like the other Boba and go on adventures with his daughter, granddaughter, like just all kinds. Well. Yeah, we kind of nipped that in the bud. But we will be back with some awesome Nerdyverse later this week, which we are excited for. Thank you to everybody that's been supporting that new series and all of that goodness. And just have an awesome week until then. And thank you for listening. I've been your herd leader, John.
I love you.
I love you, do daddy.